Hello everybody, my name is Mike Geig and welcome to another live Unity session. Today we will be doing Merry Fragmas Part 3, which is the third and final day in our first-person shooter multiplayer game series. Some of you had mentioned to me that it's saying Part 1 on the website. I don't really know why, but it doesn't matter because today is in fact Part 3, so even though it says Part 1, don't really worry about it. Before we begin, like always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, follow us, message us on Twitter at Unity3D, at The Ant Ranch, at Will Goldstone, at Matt Mirrorfish, or at Mike Guy, which is me. Yesterday we had some audio issues. People had talked about it in chat, and I just assumed it was localized, but apparently we were having some actual audio issues, which affected the recording. So today, if there are audio issues, please let me know. Also in chat, if you have questions, you can make them pop out by saying @UnityTech before asking your question, and it will be more apparent to me, and I'll be more likely to get to it. So, hello everyone in chat, saying hi to me. How are you doing today? I'm going to hope you are doing well. So let's talk about where we finished yesterday. Yesterday we finished with our basic multiplayer stuff. So we now spawn players. Those players are synced across the network. When you die, you respawn. I can actually run this here. We'll just run this and see what we got. Give it a second here. There we go, and we connect to a game, and we run around in that game, and we shoot stuff. And if there are other players, we'd be seeing the other players. So right now, our game, when we launch it, we automatically go into a room. And so I want to have the ability to do a few things, which we're going to talk about in order. So the first is I want to be able to have a username. So, I can be unique and people can know who I am. I can know who people are. So we're going to have the ability to do usernames. Also, we'd like some messages, right? So I'd like to know when a player spawns or when a player joins the room. And I'd also like to know when you shoot someone or when you get shot. So I'd like some kind of messaging system so that we can see who's shooting who and kind of keep track of gameplay in that way. And it's going to be real simple, a real robust chat or message system. It takes a good amount of work, and so the one we're going to do is going to be fairly basic, but it'll still get the premise across. It'll still kind of help with all that. Once that's done, I'd like to have the ability for us to do some animation stuff. We're not going to do a lot of like model animations, but I would at the very least, depending on time, be able to sync the state of our gun, whether we're sprinting or aiming or whatever. So, and then hopefully just wrap up with some questions and stuff like that. So, okay. So now what we're gonna do? Let's start. The first thing I want to do. We'll notice when we run this. We have that string at the bottom there and telling us the state of our connection. And at the very bottom, it says joined, all right? And it just says joined forever now, right? Because I'm in the room and it just sits there forever and ever. So I really don't like that because it's taking up space on the screen. It doesn't change. It's served its purpose and its purpose is over. So I'd like to start by cleaning that up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and open up our network manager script. And inside here, we can see that currently we're just using update to update the text of that connection string every frame. And that's really inefficient. It's really not the way we want to go about this. So let's go ahead and change this, right? So it's not updating every frame, even though the string is never changing and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop using this as an update method. I'm actually going to make it a coroutine. So I'm going to say IEnumerator, and let's call this update connection string, all right, as an enumeration. And so inside here, we're simply going to be updating this text while this coroutine is running. So I'll just say while true, and then tab that out there. There we go. MonoDevelop does its thing, and I fix it. All right, and then the last thing in here is just yield return null. Okay, so now we just have a coroutine that handles this. And so when I start my game up, right, I'm going to start that coroutine. So we'll just say start coroutine, and I'll pass in there this title. And I want to stop with this coroutine when I finally join a room. So I'm going to come down to on joined room, and I'm just going to say stop coroutine. There There we go, just like that. And then I'm going to say connection text dot text equals nothing. All right. So at this point, it'll show up. It'll show me my network stuff. Once I've connected to the room, the text is going to go away. We're no longer going to be updating every frame, so it's more efficient. And I can see this work here. I'm just going to go ahead and hit play. We'll see our connection data. I join the room, and the string is gone. Perfect. Clean that little bit up because it was a bit annoying. Another thing I did, and I actually already did this one behind the scenes, but I'll tell you about it now. I did this one earlier just for the sake of doing it. Here where we set the candy cane onto our gun layer, right, so that it appears appropriately, we had the problem where the sights were on the wrong layer, so I repeated the same line for the sights. So in case you're wondering why it's doing that for me now, I didn't bother doing that live because you get the idea. All I did is copy and paste and add the word sights. So yeah, so now you're aware of that. All right. So now that we have that cleaned up there and I've fixed that sites issue, all right, what I want to do now is I want to start adding my lobby controls, okay? And so I want I want a panel to manage username. Well, obviously, we're not going to do any authentication, no password, but room list, the room you want to join, some buttons, some text, that sort of stuff. Now, this isn't a UI tutorial, right? And so I don't really want to go through and talk about all of the UI elements in depth. However, we will touch upon some of the basics here. And I'm going to create a very simple UI system for this. So pop into 2D mode, double click the canvas to zoom out. All right. And so what I want to do first is I'm going to have a panel that's going to contain all of my stuff so that I can easily hide it. Because if you think about it, the panel should only appear while we're in the lobby. Before we're in the lobby, we don't really need that panel. And after we've joined a room, we don't need that panel either. So we'll just make a quick panel that everything will be on that we can just turn on and off. And so I'm going to right click on the canvas. I'm going to select UI and panel. And it's going to give me like a huge panel here, and it's going to be anchored to stretch and all that. So what I want is I just want the anchor to be right in the very center. So I'm going to manually change my anchors. Or you know what, I'll just click the tool here. Just do that. And that puts the anchor in the center. Right, so just the anchoring tool there. And now I just want to modify the size of this thing. So it doesn't need to be so big. We'll do something like, I don't know, something like that. Maybe just lift it a little bit above. Yeah, like that. Okay, so there we go. And so that's just going to be the panel that stuff's going to be on. We'll just call this lobby panel. There we go. And I could change my color and stuff, but I'm pretty okay with that. So this panel is going to be the thing that holds all the rest of my stuff. So first and foremost, like I had mentioned, I'm going to right click on lobby panel, go to UI. I'm going to get an input field, which is going to be for our username. And I'm just going to move the anchor for that somewhere in the upper right hand corner. We'll say something like that. I probably should just type the values in, so I'm going to do that. So 0.95, 0.95, 0.95, 0.95. So it's going to be basically 5% away from the edge of this panel. And I'll just snap my box right there and do something like that. All right, so that works. So this is going to be our username. And so instead of having this placeholder saying enter text, I'm going to go to the placeholder element, and I'm just going to remove the text there. And I want this to actually have a default value. So I'm going to click in the input field and, or in the input object itself. I'm going to look through the input field component, and I'm going to look for, where are you? I'm actually trying to see through my microphone right now, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. Text right here. And so we'll just say default player. And that's going to be our default text. And if I run this, yep, there we go. Default player is in the text box. Perfect. So that works for me. I'm also going to go ahead and create, so right click on the lobby panel, go to UI, go to text. And so this one's going to be just my descriptor text. So it's going to be username colon. And that anchor, I'm going to put at 0.05, 0.95, 0.05, 0.95. So just the opposite corner, and we'll just go ahead, there we go. And we'll just have the username there. And that font is too small, so what do we want to do? Let's do best fit, there we go. I'll just click best fit, it'll figure it out, and it's not going to be size. I probably should just type a name in there, but or a number in there. Let's do that. No reason to do processing that we don't need to do. And that I want to be black. Username. There we go. So your username is default player. All right, before you do anything else. So next, let's go ahead and, let's change that to be user text as its name, just to help identify it. And let's do user input. Okay, and so that's my username stuff there. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the room. All right, so I'm just gonna actually click both of these and Control-D duplicate them, and then just move them down a little bit. There we go. And now that they're down a bit, let's go ahead and click on this one, and this one's just gonna be room text, and it's gonna say room to join. There we go. And we'll make sure it lines up there. Perfect. This one will become room inputs, just like that. And its default value is going to be default room. There we go. And make sure that one snaps, and it does. Perfect. So now we have our inputs for username and our room to join. The next thing I want is an input section which is going to have the list of all of the rooms. All right. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on my lobby panel, and again UI. This is going to be another input, so input field, right? And let's just go ahead and give it some size here. Just leave room at the bottom for our button, so something like that. And so for our input field, I don't want the player to be able to type into this, right? It's going to be read only, so because we're going to write our numbers to it. And so I'm going to come in here, placeholder text. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. There we go. Its default text is just going to be empty. I want it to be dark, and also I don't want the player to be able to type into it, so I'm going to uncheck interactable. They can no longer click into it. And I'm going to change the color of it, so let's just make it dark. Something like that. I like that. And let's make the text of it light. I'll click expand it and go to the text property, and we'll just make it white. There we go. And the last thing I want to do here is I'm going to come down to where it says line type, and I'm going to go to multi-line new line, just like that. So it's a multi-line box now. Now, the very, very last thing I need is my button. So I'll right click on lobby panel, and I'm going to go to UI, I'm going to go to button, move that to the bottom here. Good size, there we go, our button. And let's make our button text say, let's see here, join or create room. There we go. And so there's our button, and we'll just call that join button. Join BTN, why not, shorten it up. Okay, and so now I have my layout. All right, and so you can see all I need to do is turn that panel on and off, which turns everything else on and off, right? So simplifies that, a lot. And so, okay, so I have my panel here, and so now we can go ahead and write our scripts to utilize this. So this is going to interact with our network manager script, and so we're just going to go ahead and plug that in a bit. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my network manager. All right, here we go. We'll leave the rest of those open there. Let me just check chat here real quick. Are we going to animate the player moving today? We're going to animate some stuff, but we're not going to bring a model in just for sake of time. But you'll get the idea. It'll be easy enough. If you know how to animate a model anyway, this is just another step. And if you don't, we've got plenty of videos on Mechanim. Okay. So let's see here. All right. So the first thing I need to do is I need to create all the fields of the UI stuff. And so again, I'm just going to use my serialized field tag. So serialized field. And the first thing I'm going to have is a game object, not a game logic, game object, which is going to be our server window or our lobby window. I'll just call it server window, whatever. Not exactly an accurate name, but whatever. Serialized field. The next thing I'm going to need is my input field for my username. which is just going to be username. There we go. And I'm actually going to cheat and just highlight that whole thing and paste it 2 more times, because we are also going to have a room name. There we go. And we are going to have a room list. They're all input fields, just utilized in slightly different ways. All right, and so that's going to give me control of all the UI stuff. I'll have to plug those in inside Unity. And so now what we can see is that when we turn our game on, right, we start immediately connecting to Photon. When we join the lobby, we immediately join a room, and then the game just sort of starts up, right? And so we want to change that, right? So we no longer want to automatically join a room. And so I'm going to create a new function called public void join room. And its job is going to be actually processing the joining of the room instead of, so it doesn't automatically happen. I'm actually going to move this stuff down here. So we'll control it with that button press. Now on joined lobby, we're still going to use that because the purpose of on joined lobby is going to be to enable that server window. So we'll just do server window dot set active equals true. All right, and so now we can just go ahead and plug this in now. We can see what's going to happen here. So basically the UI, we'll turn the UI off here in a moment, but when we start this up, it'll turn it on. When we click the button, we're going to set it up to join our room, and then we'll get the other stuff plugged in there. So back in Unity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the network manager right here, and you can see I have new stuff I need to drop items into. So lobby panel becomes the server window. Let's see, user input becomes the username, room input becomes the room name, and then what did I name that? Oh, I didn't rename that. I need to rename that. Room list. There we go. Room list becomes the room list. All right. And just to show you how this is going to work, I'm going to turn off my lobby panel for now. Oops, before I do that, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to click on the button, and I'm going to look to see that the button has its on-click event, but it's currently empty. So I'm going to add an event, and the thing it's going to control is going to be Network Manager. And what it's going to do is it's going to go to the Network Manager script, and it's going to call join room. All right. Now let's try it out. Let's go ahead and turn this off, and we're going to go ahead and hit play. So we see now once we've joined the lobby, it appears. Obviously nothing here yet, and we'll click join or create room, and there we go. Now obviously we need to get rid of the UI now, but you can see how it works. So now it's managed by that button. It's not managed automatically. Now when we join a room, the very first thing we can do is we can say server window dot set active equals false, because we no longer need that UI part there. So as soon as we join the room, just turn that particular window off. Let's see here. Just checking chat real quick here. You do for the room only one name which contains Mike, but if I have 2 room or more, what do you think will happen? You need to fix it. Well, yeah. I do need to fix it. That's exactly what we're doing right now. So yes, we will do just that. All right, and so now this is set up so far. Let's make our join room function actually utilize the stuff we put in, right? Let's utilize the username. Let's utilize the room name and stuff like that. So right now, right, we're just by default joining a room called Mike. And so what we're going to do instead, all right, is we are going to set our username and then join the appropriate room. All right, and so what we can do here is what I'm going to say is first and foremost, I need to put in my default name. What's my name? Okay, and so we're going to do that by saying Photon Network. Oops. And Photon Network has a class inside called Player, which represents us, right, the player. And so I'm going to say Photon Network.player.name. And I'm going to say, what is my name? And my name is going to be username.text, right? So that username input field .text, that becomes my name. Right, there's really no validation here, so you might want to write some code to validate and stuff like that, and to prevent inappropriate things. But for now, we're just kind of going fast because we need to cover a lot of stuff. All right, and so the next thing I need to do, so now this sets my name, okay, and this is persistent, right? And I can always just call Photon network.player.name and pull that name back out. So it's really nice. It's kind of globally available. So that sets my name. And so now to join a room, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say, what did I call that? Room name.text will be the room I either create or join, okay? Unfortunately, the way we're going to have it set up is we have to actually type in the room. I would have liked it to be able to say, just click on the room and hit join, but I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just dealing with time constraints, and that would take too long to set up. So now this sets our name, and this sets the room we want to join, okay? However, we still don't have our room list, and this is a bit of a tricky thing, all right? A lot of people try to generate their room list right here on joined lobby, okay? But it doesn't work. And the reason is when you join the lobby, on join lobby is called the moment you join the lobby. But the room list takes a little time to download and propagate, right? And so we can't get our room list right here. We need another function, all right? Another Photon function, which is going to give us that information, all right? So, and that function is void on received, and I can never remember how to spell received. There we go. Room list. So this function is called as soon as we receive the room list, and that's when we can propagate that field. Now the room list is in the form of an array of an item called room info. So I'm going to create that room info, which is an array of room info items, room info rooms equals Photon network dot get room list. It's also important to note that this function only works in the lobby. If you're in a room, this won't work, all right? You would have to write some code to make that work in a room, so just be aware of that. And so now I have my list of rooms, all right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to iterate through that. So I'm going to say for each, and inside I will say room info, which I'll just call room in rooms. So for each room in rooms, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now fill that room list. So I'll say room list dot text plus equals, all right, plus equals room dot name plus, and now we need a new line character so that it moves everything down to the next line. So it's not just one long string, but it's multi-lined. All right. So now what we've done is we have made it so on join lobby turns on our UI, on join room turns off our UI. Oop. We have a join room function that when we click the button, it calls it. That sets our player's name, that joins the specified room, and we have on received room list, which is going to propagate all of the rooms that currently exist. So let's try this out. So let's come back to Unity here. I'm going to go ahead and build this. I don't remember what my version number is, so we might see some rooms that other people are currently playing. I don't know. It all gets a little weird when we start dealing with networking. Oh, right, I gotta set up my build settings. So let's do build and run. Oh, I have a builds folder already, so we'll just use that one. Yep, replace that. Here's a question. In your experience, how long does it take for 3 to make an average game? Oh man, that's an impossible question. What's an average game? How skilled are the 3 people? Is it full-time, part-time? It's an unanswerable question, which pretty much everyone in chat is already saying. Let's see here. Okay, and then everyone's talking about Call of Duty, so not exactly productive. So here we go. I start the game up here. I see that I'm default player, default room. Let's just no other rooms available, so let's just join or create room. So there we go. And now let me come over to Unity here, and let's run this. Oops, there we go. And so, well, I don't see my room. I did something weird. I think I misspelled the name of that function in the script. So that's no good. Let's figure that one out. I always spell things wrong. Let's see. On receive. Oh, yep, I did. That's my fault. It's not on received room list. It's on received room list update. So my mistake. There we go. I forgot the last part of that update. It's a long function name, so you'll have to forgive me for missing a part of it. Let's try this again. All right. One of the questions is, should we reset the room list to an empty string each time inside the function? You really should. That's actually a really good point. The only reason I don't is there's no way to go from being in a room back to the lobby, so it's not a problem. But you're absolutely correct, and we'll just do that here in a second. So let me just join or create a room here. There we go. Go ahead and play this one. And there we go. Default room. So I can see a room already exists. There's already a player in there. And so I'll just be Mike. Hello. And I'll pop into the game, and the other player's in here somewhere, and yeah. So perfect. And so we can see that that is working. And you are absolutely correct. Inside here, we really just need to do something along the lines of roomlist.text equals nothing, in case you ever add the functionality to leave a room and come back to the lobby. I actually didn't notice that because I wasn't worrying about it. So, all right, perfect. So now we have our room list, we have our username, we have that stuff. So let's talk about the difficult stuff, all right? And that difficult stuff is messaging. And I say difficult, it's really not all that bad. So now we need to set up a way to have messages across the screen so everyone can kind of see who's spawning and who's killing who, and it's the social network of violence. And so what we're going to do now, I'm just going to come back to my canvas here. Oh, I already have this disabled. I was about to disable lobby panel. So we'll just disable that. If you wanted to leave this enabled, you could just put an awake function in your script that disables it, but for now, yeah, we can just do that. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the messaging part, okay? And we need somewhere for our messages to appear. So that is going to be yet another input field. So I'm going to right click on canvas, I'm going to go to UI, and I'm going to say input field. There we go. Here's another one. This one is just going to be, we'll just call this one messages. There we go. Let's turn off its placeholder text. We don't want any of that. Let's make, let's see, everything's pretty dark, but let's make its background dark and slightly see-through, maybe something like that. I don't know, that's all right. There we go. So that works for me. It's non-interactable. It is going to be multi-line, new line. There we go. I'll move its anchor to the lower left-hand corner. I will move the box just kind of around that and make it a fairly good size. I don't really need it to be all that wide, but I do want it to be kind of tall. So something like that. And then I'm going to go to the text of it, and I'm going to make the default text size 12, and I'll make the color slightly lighter. I'm like, that. I don't know, just kind of preferences. You can kind of tweak around with it and stuff like that. And let's align it to the bottom. There we go. All right, and so there we go. So our messages is set up there, more or less the way I like it. So that's good. Go ahead and save my scene. So now let's go ahead and pop up our network manager. And what we're going to do is obviously we need a way to manage this. And so here's the thing. So if I write any text to that messages text box I just added, it will appear in my game, and that's fine, but I need to share it, right? I need the messages to be propagated across all the clients of the game. And so what I really need is an RPC. And you'll remember RPCs from yesterday, remote procedure calls. And an RPC is going to allow me to say, hey, here's the message, everyone add that to your message list. You may also remember that for an RPC to work, we need a Photon view, right? And we had one on our player network mover. That has a Photon view on the player, right? And that all works. But our network manager does not have a Photon view, so we're going to need to add one. And so I'm going to click on my network manager here, all right? And I'm going to click Add Component. Where's Photon? Photon Networking, Photon View. And the observed component of my Photon View is my network manager script. Now, I'm not going to be syncing all of these items, right? I'm actually not going to be syncing any of these items, but I need this to do RPCs. Okay, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So I now have this. I'll go ahead and save my scene again so I don't forget it. And we'll come back to our code. All right, and so now we need our input field for our message window. So there we go, serialized field, input field. This one we'll just call message window. There we go. And so now we're going to have to determine how are we going to manage our messages, right? how we're gonna keep track of that. And so you might create a list, and a list could work, right? You just add items to the list and stuff like that. However, if you're a little familiar with C# or with general data algorithms, right, you might recognize that there is a better collection to do this with. And that collection is a queue. And so to use a queue, we're going to say using system.collections.generic. And a queue, right, is basically like a line, first in, last out. No, first in, last out. No, that's a stack. First in, first out. Yeah, that's a queue. I don't know. FIFO. I don't remember. Whatever. Basically, we're going to add something to it, and then we're going to keep adding to the front and removing from the back. All right? And so I need to use system collection generic. And so now underneath game object player here, I'm going to create my queue. So queue. By the way, this is a great trivia question to ask your friends. What's the only English word that is 5 letters long? You can remove 4 of the letters and say it the same way, and it's Q. So there you go. And we'll just call that messages. Q messages. Okay. We also need to know how many messages we can have, so we'll do a constant int, and then we can just call that maybe message count. Set that equal to... you know, I think 6 will fit in that box with size 12 font. We'll have to try that out. Yeah, but you can try something out like that. And since we're going to be able to, or needing to do RPC calls, we're going to need to do get components for the Photon view. We don't want to have to call get component all the time, so let's go ahead and cache it by saying Photon view, and we'll just keep it locally. So there we go. So these are the things we're going to need. We're going to need our message window, we're going to need a Photon view, number of messages, and our messages, our queue right there. Now in our start method, let's get the stuff we need here. So inside start, we're going to start by saying Photon view equals get component, Photon view. There we go. All right, so that's that. And now let's go ahead and set up our queue. So we will say messages equals new queue string. And inside we're going to specify an initial capacity, so we don't need to mess around with memory. So our initial capacity is going to be message count. That part is not necessary, but it's just one more thing that helps prevent the garbage collector from running, and so I like to do it. All right. So there we go. So we have that stuff right there. And so now what we're going to do is we need to create our RPC call. And again, we're going to kind of work backwards, right? And so what we're going to do is we are going to create our RPC call, and then we're going to create our function that calls the RPC call, and then we're going to call that function. All right. And the reason we're going to create an RPC and then a function that calls the RPC is so that other things can call the non-RPC version, right? It'll make sense here a little later. All right. And so I'm just going to come all the way to the bottom now. It's getting to be kind of a big script here, but let's come all the way to the bottom and let's create our RPC call here. And so what we're going to say is first we need the attribute RPC. All right. And we are going to say void add message. And let's just separate that by saying add message underscore RPC. So we know it's our RPC version. And then string message. No semicolon. There we go. You know what? Let me add a bunch of spaces here so it's not near the bottom. I see some activity in chat here, so let me just read this real quick here. See. So yes, someone asked if this is possible to do this single player or multiplayer, and the answer is absolutely yes. You can actually run this in an offline mode and kind of get the exact same thing. This might be a hard question, but can I write my server client program in C++ with SFML library and pass information to Unity? You can, but it's really kind of beyond the scope of this. So we're just using Photon, as someone else had pointed out in chat, because it's just fast and easy. This is only a 3-day session, about an hour a piece, so it means I only have 3 hours to build a multiplayer first-person shooter game. So yeah, we're cutting corners. Okay, and is an RPC different from a coroutine? Yes. An RPC is just a function that's called on all machines at the same time. A coroutine is something very different. Okay. So add messages RPC. So what we're going to do inside here, this is where we are going to add a message to our queue. So remember, messages is the name of our queue, and to add something to the front of it, we're going to call the function enqueue. All right, enqueue, just put something at the front, right, which is exactly what we want. And what are we going to put at the front? We're going to put message at the front. There we go. And now we need to make sure our queue doesn't get too big. So we are going to say if messages, all right, dot count is greater than, what did I call that? Messages, you know what? These things are more memorable. What did I call that? Message count. So if messages.count is greater than message count, which is my total number, right? So if I have more than 6, I'm going to say messages.dequeue, which is just going to remove the item at the end, right? So just pop something out the back end. We don't need it anymore, so good to go. A lot of people pronounce that deck. I pronounce it DQ. I have no idea which one's right, but since we call that a queue, I'm going to call that a DQ, whatever. But just so you know, all right, so we're adding to the front, and we're popping them out the back, and there we go. And so we'll always just have 6 items at the most, and our chat will flow very regularly because of that, okay? And so now that I have my queue managed, right, let's go ahead and write to our message window. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say message window dot text. So first thing we're going to do is clear it out. Okay, we're going to empty the message window, and then we are going to write all of the current messages into it, and that is a for each. So for each string m in messages, all right, so for each string we are going to say message window dot text plus equals m plus, and again a new line character. There we go. All right, so here's our RPC. Every time this is called, whatever the message is across all clients, they update their queues and they write that to the to their screen. The nice thing about that is if someone joins late and they missed some of the text, they'll just start off with what's new to them, right? And so we don't necessarily need to worry about, do all of them have the same number of messages and stuff like that. It's irrelevant, right? They'll manage themselves. So that's nice. So that is our RPC call, and a lot of other classes won't be able to necessarily call this RPC directly without having a direct reference, and I don't really want to get into all of that, so we're going to simplify this. We're going to create another function called add message. This one's not an RPC, so this one will just have string message. And the role of this add message function is to call the RPC. So Photon view dot RPC. There we go. And what method are we calling? We're going to call add message RPC. Who are we sending it to? Well, we're going to send it to all. And what's the parameter? Well, the parameter is message. There we go. So now we're saying whenever this function's called, RPC that message to everybody. All right. The last part we need to do here to get this working is we need to basically add a function to our spawn player. Right? Now we could do this to spawn player, or we could do this to onJoined room. It's personal preference. If we add it to onJoined room, it's just going to tell us whenever a new player joins the room. If we add it to spawn player, it's going to tell us whenever the player respawns. Right? So this could down here could make the chat kind of hectic. Up here, you may lose track of who's in the game or whatever. So it's kind of personal preference or whatever. We'll put it down here in spawn player just because that's the way it is on my sample. But yeah, it's entirely up to you. So down here we can just say add message. All right, we're just going to call the function, and we are going to say spawned player plus photon network dot player dot name. There we go. So now, whenever we join, it's going to RPC that out, okay? So let's try it out. Let's come back here to Unity. Let's go to our network manager. Our network manager has the new message window, which we're going to need to put in there. There we go. All right, so let's try this out. We'll go ahead and save this. We'll go ahead and build this. All right. All right, so there we go. And so default player, default room, whatever, we'll just join that. And we see at the bottom there, spawned player, default player. Cool. And so now, let's go ahead and play our game here. And while I'm at it, let me just move this off to the side. So we'll spawn Mike. We'll just join the default room. So I see it says, ooh, we spawned at the same spot too. This causes a jittering. I'll show you how to fix that, by the way. So we see spawned player Mike, and on the other window, we see spawned player default player, and then spawned player Mike. All right. So let's go ahead in this window here. Let's exterminate that one, and we're going to see spawn player default player pop back in when the default player respawns. All right. And we see that on both windows here. There we go. So now we have our messaging synced across the two. All right. So there we go. Another question in the chat here, again, are we going to animate the player moving? We're going to animate the gun. We are not going to animate the player. There's just not enough time. But I'm going to show you how to animate the gun, which is going to show you how to sync animation states across the network, which means if you know how to animate a player, then it's the same thing. If you don't know how to animate a player, that's not really part of this tutorial anyway. That's more Mechanim, and we've got tons of videos on that, so feel free to check that out. Okay, another question is about things that I recommend. We'll talk about that later because that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with what we're doing right now. So, okay, and so now we have our RPC messages working, right? And so that's pretty cool, okay? And so now what we want to do is we want to have it tell me, you know, when I kill someone, right? Another question in chat is, can we make it so their names appear above their head? We can, but again, it's kind of beyond the scope of this right now. But it's really easy. We already know their name, so just put a text element right above their head with their name on it, right? It's really actually quite simple. And if there's time at the end, maybe we'll do that. Okay, so let's talk about how we want to manage the messaging here. So basically, player network mover, this is the one that knows when you die, right? And so this is the one that's going to generate the message. Now, this part I'm not a big fan of. The way I'm structuring right now, I actually don't kind of like. Ideally, I'd have a more robust, statically, globally accessible messaging pipeline that I could send messages to, and those would get networked, right? That's what I would want to do. But we only have like 20 more minutes, and so that's not what we're gonna do. We're gonna do something a little bit more basic. It still works. Its structure is fine. It's secure. I'm just, you know, it's not very robust, and it doesn't, you know, it's not very robust for moving forward. But whatever. That's how this stuff works. So we're going to create another event, and our network manager is just going to subscribe to it, and so the player network mover can send events back to the network manager without them being too tightly coupled. And so I'm just going to do public delegate. This one's going to be void, and we'll just call this send message. There we go. And just going to read in a string message. All right, and then we will have a public event called send message. All right, and our local one will just be send network message, just like that. There we go. Okay, and so that's the event that we can subscribe to. All right, there we go. And so now what we need to do is we need to utilize it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to where the player dies, and this is where we respawn and all that stuff. And we're going to say if send network message does not equal null. So if something has subscribed to it, then we're just going to call it. So what string do we pass in here? Obviously, the string is something along the lines of, hey, we died, right? But who killed us? And who are we? Right? And so this is where we utilize the more static part of the Photon network. And so what we're going to do inside here is we are going to start by saying Photon network. All right, so we're going to start with who are we? So Photon network.player.name. You remember how we set up the player name previously? Well, now we're just going to access it. So this is us. We are Photon network.player.name. All right, plus space was killed by. All right, so who is our opponent's name? Well, we don't really know, do we? And our RPC is just giving us damage, but it's not telling us who called it. So let's go ahead and modify our RPC just slightly. So I'm just going to cap this for now, right? And we'll come back to adding that part in. And so our RPC right now is this get shot where we read in damage, but let's also read in string enemy name. Okay. And so now what we'll say is we'll say we were killed by plus enemy name. Great. So now where does enemy name come from? Well, let's go over to our player shooting script, okay? And let's look where we shoot someone, right? Hit, transform, get component, photon view RPC, get shot, and we pass in damage. Well, now we have a second parameter. So unless we update this, our code is actually not going to work. We're going to get an error because it needs two parameters. So we're passing in damage already. Let's also pass in photon network dot player dot name. And so you might be wondering, wait a minute, aren't we going to get the same name, right? We're both just calling photon network dot player dot name. You'll have to remember that this script is running on the computer of the person shooting, and this script is running on the computer of the person being shot. So they'll have two different values, right? So if I shoot player B, right, this is where my name gets added, right? My computer does not run this code because it's not mine. Player B runs this and their name goes in there, all right? So player shooting calls our new RPC. Our new RPC, right, sends a network message, right, to anything subscribed to that event. So now let's step back one more time to our network manager, and all we need to do now is we just need to subscribe to that event. And we subscribe to an event right now where we do player get component, player network mover, respawn me. That's the respawn event. So let's just subscribe to it again. This time we are going to subscribe to send network message, and the event we're subscribing to that is just our add message. There we go. So now we are subscribed to that. Okay. So let's see exactly what happens now. So I'm just going to come back to Unity. There's really no changes inside Unity we need to make, so let's just go ahead and rebuild. And we'll just give this a moment. Elevator music. All right, and we'll hit play. We will go ahead and create a room. Spawn us. We'll just go ahead and move this off to the side. We'll come over here. I don't know where that player spawned, so there we go. I will be Mike. By the way, we can use player prefs to easily remember our name too, by the way, if you're familiar with how to use those. So where is the other me? There I am. Okay, and so let's shoot him. Oops. Whoops, whoops. I accidentally opened MonoDevelop because I clicked off screen. There we go. So now I see default player was killed by Mike, and then spawned default player. There he is again. Default player was killed by Mike. It was a massacre. Spawned default player. All right. So you know what? Let's let the other guy have a turn. All right. So here we go. This guy got shot a bunch. Go ahead, and I got to click in the window there to capture the mouse. And so now we see Mike was killed by default player. All right, and then Mike spawned again. So cool. That all works. Let's go ahead and close that and close that. So we have our chat. Well, it's not really chat, but we have our messaging system in place, so we can see when people spawn and when people die. Let me read our chat here real quick because I see there's quite a few questions. Let's see. I have a character selection screen with 10 avatars. How can I integrate it instead of just names appearing? That's a bit more involved, right? But again, it's just a matter of sharing data. I'd keep all those avatar images in some, maybe a list or a dictionary or something, and then just add that to the UI. I don't know. That's a bit more complicated. Let's see here. If the player moves to another level scene, does this whole setup need to be on each scene? Is each level equal to a new room? No. Well, you know, I'm not familiar with how Photon handles that. I do know that if a player leaves the scene, you have to write some code that'll transition their data across. So I'm actually not sure. That's a really good question. I don't know, feel free to start a forum post and send me the link and I'll look it up and give you an answer. Let's see here. Can you send us the full assets of this development? No. I talked about why yesterday. I don't want to distribute other people's assets. I will give you the code because that's the assets that I generated, but all the rest of the stuff you'll have to get from the asset store. Watch the first video to figure it out. Is it a lot more work to get bullet impacts and gun flashes to show up on other players' stuff? No, we can actually just network instantiate those things and move them around just like we're doing now. So instead of regular instantiation, just network instantiation and just deal with a pool of them. It really isn't any... It's a little bit more work, obviously, but not a lot more. And it's all the same concepts. Did you fix the character jitters? Not yet. Will this work in web player? Yes, it will. If I make a sword, how do I send collider info from one player to another? Just as we're doing now. Instead of collision with a raycast, you collide with a sword, and then you do the exact same thing. So really not any different. Okay, so now let's come back to where we're at. So now let's talk about animation a little bit, right? And here, you know, obviously there's a lot of stuff we want to do, right? I would love to have a real model in here with a real gun and do all that stuff, but two reasons why I don't is, one, I don't have any of those assets, and I could just pull them from the asset store, but I don't currently have any, and really the good ones aren't free anyway. And B, just don't really have a lot of time, right? It's not a lot. It takes a good amount of time. Plus, there's a lot of mechanism stuff that is we've already done a little bit, and this isn't a mechanism tutorial, so we're really not messing around with that too much. But I do want to show you how to sync the states over the network, and so we're going to utilize the animation stuff we already have to do that. All right, and so what we're going to do is we already have information here, right? So if I go to my network mover script, we already have a place to send data across the network. Right here. So far we're sending our position, our rotation, our health, right? And we're receiving position, rotation, and health, all right? So let's go ahead and set it up so we can receive animation information as well. And you're going to see the animations actually are going to look kind of dumb with the capsule collider, but, you know, and it is what it is. So remember our parameters, right? Our parameters are we have aim and we have sprint. We also have a trigger called fire. We're not going to implement that one today. Just because it's a trigger, we can't necessarily get its state, right? Now we can send an RPC whenever a player fires and stuff like that, but there's just not enough time to set that up. But I just want to show you how we mix states, and you know, fire is just kind of basically just like that. But let's go ahead and go bool aim, and we'll start with that being false, and bool sprint, also with that being false. So there we go. And so these are the placeholders for these variables. We're just going to set them up as false to begin with. We're also going to have our animator, so animator anim right there. All right. And so we just need that there. Now, inside the start method, we are going to say anim equals get component in children animator. There we go. So we just have a reference to that there. All right. And then what we're going to do is down here inside our update data method, we are going to manage these two new states. So we're going to say anim.set boolean. All right. And what we're going to set? We're going to set aim, and we're going to set it with the value aim. All right. And we're going to do anim set boolean, and we're going to set sprint with the value sprint. All right. So this is on our dummies, so we don't need to manage our own because we have all our scripts and stuff. We're good. We need to manage all of the dummies, the other players in our game. And so we do that right here inside our update data. Now, how do we share this across the network? Well, that's just going to be exactly like we've seen here with this send next and receive next. Right now we send our health and we receive all that stuff. So let's do stream dot send next, and inside here we are going to send, all right, anim dot get bool. So we're just going to ask the animator, hey, what state are you currently in? We want the bool aim. There we go. And that's going to give us whether or not it's true or false. And I missed a parenthesis. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing for sprint. So we're just going to put in our current state into the stream. And then we're going to pull out of the stream whatever that state is here. So we'll say aim equals bool. And then stream.receive next. Just copy that again. We do that for sprint. And there we go. So that is all it takes to sync our states. We're literally just going to literally sync the states there. So whatever the parameters are, so whatever my parameter is, I'm writing into the stream, and then all my dummies, I'm pulling it back out. And for the dummies, I am simply adding it to their animators, right? Because their animators we left on because they're not scripts or anything like that. Everyone can have an animator, it's not a problem. It's just a basic component. And so now what's going to happen is animation data will be synced across the network, all right? And so let's go ahead and try it out. I'm going to go ahead and build this. Some more elevator music. Let's see. Someone asked how they attach like a gun to a part of the body. You can actually expose the game object in the hand and just make the gun a child of that, and it'll just be part, you know, move with that hand. Don't know if you knew that you could do that. All right, so here we go. Got that in here. Let's go ahead and join here. Whoops. There we go. All right. Oh, hey, I can see the other guy right now. It works rather well. Hello. Okay. So there's that, and let's bring this window over here. Okay, so we already know that the motion data is synced, right? But now we can sync the aiming animation. All right, so I told you it's going to look stupid, right? Because we got that capsule, and our aiming animation is that. So we had to expect that a little bit. It's not a model made for first-person shooters, right? So there we go. That doesn't look dumb at all. So while that one looks a little weird, sprinting looks better, right? And so we can see, if you see anyone like this, you know, hey, I can shoot them because they can't shoot me. So yeah, so we're just syncing the animation stuff. If I had been working with a model with animations, it's the same deal. All I'm doing is syncing the parameters, right, of their animators. That's all I'm doing. So it's real lightweight. I'm not sending a lot of network traffic. I'm only sending 2 booleans in this case. Maybe you'd send a little bit more in a more robust situation. But yeah. That's basically it, right? It's real simple to sync that. Now we do have that jitter. The jitter is basically because we're lerping, and so he's always never quite where he's supposed to be. He's always just sort of jumping around where he's supposed to be. And we can fix that. That's a standard lerping issue. That's not unique or new really right now. But let me go ahead and close this here. I do want to do one more spot of cleaning up. Now, unfortunately, I can't go late today because I do have a time requirement to finish sort of on time, even though we're technically over time now. So one last thing I kind of want to do here is I want to manage an initial load. And an initial load is going to, because right now, here, let me explain. So right now, when I join a server, right, the server's going to tell me, hey, there's all these players already in the game, right? And so I'm just going to instantiate them all kind of somewhere, right? I don't really know where, maybe the origin, maybe somewhere random. And then the first time I pull down their positions and rotations, right, what's going to happen is it's going to lerp from my incorrect data to where they're actually at. And so they'll be flying through walls, and they'll be, you know, just shooting across levels, trying to get quickly to where they're supposed to be. So the first time I load player data, right, other players' data, I don't want to lerp that information. I just want to put them where they're supposed to be, all right? And that's our initial load. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say one more variable here. I'm going to say bool initial load. There we go, equals true, just like that. And what I'm going to say here inside update data, I'm going to say if initial load. All right, so if this is the first time, I will say initial load equals false. Technically, I won't have to do that because the coroutine will get stuck here and it will never actually return to this part, but it's always a good idea. Why not? All right, and so that I'm just going to say transform.position equals position and transform.rotation. Oh, excuse me, hiccup there. Transform.rotation equals rotation. This way, the first time I load data, I'm just going to move them to exactly where they're supposed to be. That corrects a lot of the jittering. Sometimes there's still a little jittering because we're lerping, and I could write a bit more logic here to say, hey, if they're close enough, right? If their current position is really close to where they're supposed to be, don't lerp them at all, right? And you could do something like if mathf.abs pass in transform.position minus or the position there if it's, I don't know, less than or equal to 0.001 or something like that. Don't move them at all. I probably could just write that while I'm talking about it, but you get the idea, right? So only try to lerp them if they're not really close, and that's going to remove the small jittering, and this will remove a lot of the large incorrectness of the motion. All right, and so yeah, and so at this point, our game is done, right? Granted, I mean, we still have the capsules, but like I talked about, you can put your own models in there and it'll work well. And best to get models with actual hands and that actually hold guns. There's lots of stuff on the asset store specifically made for first-person shooters to fix that for you. But it's good to just know kind of how this whole thing goes together. I feel confident right now coming over to my network manager and saying, you know what? I'm willing to change my Connect settings to 1.0. This is the first version of the game, and so now you can actually try it out. If anyone is interested in trying it out, here in chat is the version of what we just built here today. I'll go ahead and, you know what, I'll just load this up myself while I'm reading through chat here. There you go. I'll start the first room. Awesome. So there we go. Joined room called Awesome. See, I'm the only one in there. And while I'm standing here, let's see what other people are doing. Other questions. If you have 10 player, you send this to Bool to all player or only to player how are seeing you. Oh, so this goes to everyone. The animation data goes to everybody, right? Not just the person you can see, because you really don't have any way of knowing who you can see and who you can't. Alright, let's see. Right now we are not able to shoot while holding sprint and aim simultaneously. Is this because 3 keys are setting inputs? No, we actually made it so you can't shoot while, oh, who joined as me? It's cheating. We made it so you can't shoot while sprinting, because you can't shoot while sprinting, right? That makes a lot of sense. Sorry, GM, just wasted you there. Now I can say when I kill people, oh, that was crap. Who came in as me? That's bothersome. It was a double kill, by the way. We killed each other. But, really should make it so if that player already exists, you can't be it. People steal my name. You don't forget this. I hate this game. Alright. Sorry, I'm not really paying attention to chat. There we go. Sorry, social officer. Just a little bit of lag, but it's probably because I'm doing so many things at the same time right now. I don't know who else is in the game. Oh, there's a bunch of people, and I died. Okay, well, okay. I'm going to close this down. You guys can keep playing, whatever. But, you know, actually, no. There's all these people in there, so let's open it up and see if there are any other rooms. So, I lied. I am going to pull the game back up here. Ah! So, we can see there's several versions of how some. Oh, it must not have. This doesn't have that change where we reset that, that input, and I must have closed it and reopened it quickly enough, so we're having an issue there. But, the new version, the one we did today, where I actually zero that list out, won't have that problem. Let's see here. What was the address to contact you about more transition level info? You can message me at Mike Geig on Twitter, or mike@unity3d.com is my email. However, like I said before, don't just message me with a question. Message me with a link to the forum post where you asked the question, so that knowledge lives on once it's answered. Plus, if I don't get a chance to get to it, other people might have a chance to answer it before I get to it. How you made the candy cane being affected by lights, however the gun camera see only the candy cane. Watch the first video, I cover it there. Let's see here, I'm just reading through chats. Photons are just for 20 players. Do you have a solution to allow a player to create a server? Yeah, you can pay for Photon. 20 players are free. You can pay for more. You can run your own server. That has a licensing cost as well. I don't know what it is. But yeah, there's a limit to what you can get for free. If you want to run your own server and not pay for it, you might have to write it yourself. Aim looks like it overrides sprint, therefore we should be able to fire, correct? You can fire while aiming and while not, basically you can fire while not sprinting. If you're sprinting, you cannot fire. That's specifically in the code. Player shooting, right here. If we say fire and we're not sprinting, All right, you'll remember that from the first video. So no shooting while sprinting, and no sprinting while aiming. Those were intended choices. Okay. Photon Plus is on sale right now, so there you go. Someone said for the asset store. Cool. All right, and again, when's Unity 5? Soon. Okay. Anyway, that's gonna wrap up our Merry Fragmas 3-day series. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I know there's a lot more stuff we really wanted to get to, but 3 days, you know, what are you gonna do? If you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, feel free to message us on Twitter at Unity3D, at The Ant Ranch, at Will Goldstone, at Matt Mirafish, and at Mike Geig, which is me. The first 2 videos are already online on our website, unity3d.com/learn. I'll be getting this one up here shortly. Before you ask me on Twitter, no, I will not send you the assets. They are on the asset store. I'm not going to distribute other people's assets. However, the code will be on our website, so you can get it from there. Yeah, and let me just check to see if there are any other questions. Let's see here. Is it possible to write server-side code with Unity? Well, that's kind of a misstatement. Because if it's server-side code, it's not with Unity, right? It's, you know what I'm saying? Like, Unity will work with server-side code, yes, but Unity won't be the server, you know what I'm saying? So the answer to your question is not really, but not to say that you can't do what you want to do. I think you just asked it a little weird. You can use server-side code. You can write your own servers in that and then use that with Unity, yes, absolutely. Let's see here. Is anything for tomorrow? No, tomorrow is my day of rest. So tomorrow, no live sessions. Yeah. Someone asked, what's the URL to the website script? It's going to be unity3d.com/learn, right? You know what? Let me just pull it up here. So if you go to unity3d.com/learn, right? You can see all of our stuff. Here's live training. Hey, I can watch my session while I'm watching my session. I'm not going to do that. You get that mirror and mirror effect. Here's like yesterday's stuff. You can click on it, right? Here's today's. It's happening right now. If I click on yesterday's, you can see the code is right there. So today's will be up there shortly. Yeah. Can I manage how I don't. You say resive. I'm not really sure what you mean. Can I manage how something RPC for optimization, for example, the radius of me? Oh, who receives it? You can send it to certain players. You can send it to groups and stuff like that. When you say, can I do X to optimize, the answer is always yes. It's just a matter of how much work are you really willing to put in. Anyway, so yeah, okay. Going to wrap up now because I need to get going. But I'm glad you all decided to join me. I hope you all learned something. I hope you all had some fun. I hope you all got some creative juices flowing over your winter break or vacation if you take any, or Global Game Jam at the end of January here. I hope you decide to maybe make a multiplayer game or maybe a first-person shooter or something. So get them juices flowing. Let's see some projects, guys. But thank you all very much. And again, if you have questions, send them to me. Otherwise, have a very Merry Fragmas, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you.